not all customers are ready for AI to fix their security problems yet, but at the very least, the identification, the reporting, and maybe even flagging and preventing some security incidents is definitely a critical thing, and AI can do it significantly faster than any human being could do it at this point.
And arguably a little better too, by the way. Welcome back to MSPHub Studios, the show where we break down strategies, systems, and partnerships shaping the future of the MSP industry. I'm Sam, and today we're joined by Chuck Kiessling, CEO of Partner Development Group with over 25 years inside the Microsoft ecosystem. Chuck brings a deep understanding of what it really takes for an MSP to grow, scale, and build a profitable Microsoft partnerships. From CSP strategy to operational excellence to AI, Azure, and partner growth, this conversation is packed with insights every service provider should hear. Let's get into it. How are you doing, Chuck?
Doing well. How about yourself?
Doing well. Tell us a little bit about yourself, the company, the role. Obviously, I know a lot, but give our listeners a good feedback about you.
Yeah, sure. So I'll start with like a little bit of a background. So I've been in the Microsoft ecosystem for the past 25 years in basically every facet that a single human being can be. And so I started initially kind of supporting from an end user perspective, ended up moving more into network engineering, became a Microsoft FTE. And while I was there, I found myself spending a lot of time helping partners help themselves to better help me. And I realized at that point that there was kind of a little bit of a gap where there were a lot of partners that recognized that there was a lot available in the Microsoft ecosystem, but didn't necessarily know how to access it. So I opted to leave and have spent time, almost 15 years now, working with various partners of shapes, sizes, types to bolster their relationship with Microsoft. And that kind of spawned the framework that I utilize when working with partners, which is our partner development framework, ironically named. And I started to realize that I could bring more value by helping multiple partners and developing a program. So that is what kind of birthed PDG. And so Partner Development Group is a Microsoft recognized partner development organization where we focus on working with MSPs, SIs, ISVs across the board to grow and develop their visibility and profitability with their Microsoft relationship.
So pretty much you've been exposed to all the challenges that the Microsoft ecosystem creates for partners and opportunities as well, obviously, for those who've executed operational excellence properly. What would you say the top three misunderstood situations that partners put themselves into when they're trying to sell or understand Microsoft?
So I think there are a couple of different areas that really comes in. So some partners, especially more recently, I'll kind of touch on the marketplace a little bit. Some partners want to treat the marketplace as their own storefront. And there's a lot more to that. There's a strategic aspect to utilizing the marketplace. And that strategy differs between MSPs, SIs, and ISVs. So it's a matter of working that strategy in the right way. We also have a lot of partners that have been partners for a long time, and maybe they used to get a lot of leads from Microsoft, but there are a lot of things that are now very algorithm driven. So it's making sure that you're doing the right things, pulling the right levers, and that's what helps kind of overall optimize your profile and visibility to Microsoft. And I think there are also a lot of partners that feel like, well, we're very heavily certified and we've done a lot of work, but we still don't have any visibility from Microsoft and we don't understand why. And they think like just because being certified, that means that Microsoft's going to come to them. But the reality is there's a lot of really heavily certified people around the world. It's a matter of creating that overall, I would say, visibility by creating some level of uniqueness to your organization. So those are probably the top three areas that we spend a lot of time with partners.
I would agree. You need to be able to stand out amongst the high flanking other partners who are doing equally the same in terms of that badging and whatnot. And so when it comes to the journey of a partner, right? Let's take it back to the beginning. So we've identified that you could be a great partner by having the badging and having, hitting the successful points that Microsoft wants you to hit in terms of their framework or playbook. But you mentioned framework. What is that framework from an MSP's perspective, who's never been a Microsoft partner before and interested in doing so?
So, I mean, there are a couple of key areas that we tend to focus on. And the reality is I can sum it up by just one phrase, and that's
Love it.
storytelling. And being able to tell the right story about who you are and what you bring to the table and the value that you showcase to Microsoft. Because the reality is every organization is working directly with the sales organization, and Microsoft sales organization is no different than any other sales organization. They have numbers, they have goals, they have targets. So how are you going to help them hit their targets so they can help you hit your targets? So it all becomes framed around telling the right story. So making sure that you're talking about the offerings and aligning them to the right Microsoft solutions, plays, and goals that they have, and then being able to present them to the sales organization in a way that it's easily consumable. And to kind of give you an example of what I mean there, we have a lot of partners that want to sit down with the Microsoft sales organization and do their sales pitch. And I'm not saying that Microsoft doesn't care about your sales pitch, but that doesn't really tell them how they can best work with you. So having things like your win wires completed and the designations that you're going after and some of
Mm-hmm.
the offerings that you have listed and packaging that into an appropriate story. When you sit down with Microsoft, you generally have about 5 or 10 minutes to be able to say, this is who we are. This is how I'm going to help you. And here's some of the wins. This is how you can engage us with your customer base. Those are the 4 critical areas that we really help the partners focus on.
Tell me about that WinWire comment you just made. That's really interesting to me because that represents a win for them. It's
Mhm.
classified in some capacity, but give me a little bit more color on that. That's interesting.
So, I mean, I think we've all heard the phrase proof is in the pudding,
Right?
right? So
Yeah.
you can go to Microsoft and tell them how awesome you are all day long.
Right.
But without proving that, you're just somebody else with a story. So when you can come to them with a win saying, here is a customer we worked with, here were the clear, tangible outcomes that we were able to help that customer with, and here's the proof behind that. And we all know that Microsoft has the ability to look and see what that customer's adoption is. So if you go to them and say, we help this customer adopt 1,000 seats of Copilot and they're a 100-person organization, well, you kind of made that up. But if you can back that with the actual data points and you're telling the story about how they got there, that's what Microsoft needs to really work with you.
So you're backing it up with the subscription ID, the technicals, they're validating their revenue, they're seeing the opportunity closed under the partner ID, all that good stuff. And I would
100%.
think some of that comes part of it. And so would that be for direct and indirect MSPs? Like help the audience understand the differences between the two, if you don't mind.
Sure. Like when you're direct versus indirect, it's mainly the buying motion, right? So as an indirect CSP, for example, the licensing that you're providing to your customers, you're buying that through a distributor or somebody that can help you provide that. Case in point.
Yeah.
So that's just more or less the buying channel that partner is utilizing to provide that licensing. Going direct with Microsoft, you're just buying it directly from them, provisioning it directly to your customers. There's a much heavier lift to that as a partner. So you're providing support and billing, and you're obviously extending the credit. So you want to be in a good financial position because every now and again customers get behind on bills. So there's a lot of these pieces that come into being direct. It's not just a matter of the margins and the buying. You tend to get a lot more support when you're indirect, especially for smaller MSPs.
Right.
That's significantly valuable because they don't have to have like this entire help desk. They don't have to build out their own billing and automation. They are mainly focused on the customer, their adoption, and making sure that they're happy. So those are kind of some of the key differences, but the short version, it's really just how you're buying your licensing to provide to your customers.
Yeah, I would agree. I would even challenge or encourage partners to consider indirect until they get into a heavy motion volume and can handle the financial stress test behind it. Because as a tier one partner, you are obligated to own that paper at the end of the day on behalf of that customer. And so,
Mhm.
it goes back to probably other things in your framework for CSP tier one direct partners, which is the operational excellence piece of it, right? How do I ensure I provision, deliver, bill? Oh, and by the way, get paid. Getting paid is important,
Yeah.
right? So
I
that's a
mean,
big deal.
I've been around the CSP program for a really long time, and I've seen kind of the morph of that program between direct and indirect. And it used to be very focused on revenue. Like you had just meet this minimum revenue target, then you could apply to be direct. Then it was this minimum revenue target, and then a few other check boxes that you have to meet. And the most recent change where Microsoft increased it to $1 million worth of trailing 12-month CSP revenue. But that's just the very beginning aspect to it. To your point, it's the financial stress test that comes into it, but Microsoft is more focused on the customer experience side of things. So being able to provide the licensing is just the first step, but
Right.
they want your customers happy working with you and transacting and things like that. So there's a lot of systems that come into play for that.
Yeah, there's a term a lot of the partners will use is, and it could be exercise for both all the three hyperscalers, if you will, but it's well architected framework. And so, if you think about well architected framework in a fourth grader's version of explanation, what does that mean to partners? What do they need to do to be able to establish that so they could brag about their capabilities?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it comes down to operational excellence, right? So, I could start my own Microsoft partner today, and I could hire a sales guy and start selling services, and I could subcontract that work out to whoever I want, or I could start selling licensing and just make sure that I'm an indirect provider. But if I don't have the ability to appropriately manage that through SOPs, right? So standard operating procedures, make sure that I'm onboarding and offboarding the right way, that I'm provisioning the licensing, I'm giving them access to a self-service portal, or at least a dedicated person that they can reach out to with appropriate SLAs, that they know that they're going to get their bill on time and that it's easy for them to pay it. How do they initiate support requests? How do they track the completion of that support? So all of those, like a well-architected framework, especially in the eyes of a licensing business, all of those pieces really come into play, and you want to establish that footprint. And you can do that by working with organizations like yours, where you already have that established footprint and they become the sales end to their organization, and they're getting the support they need to create an appropriate customer experience.
Yeah, that's great. And then PDG obviously helps the operational training and excellence behind it, and establishing that cadence that they need to follow, because it does have to be a cadence, otherwise it can or will become a costly endeavor to you as a partner. And it irrelevant of the size of MSP or VAR you are, at the end of the day, no one wants to lose money on a product they sold and forget to invoice it, bill it, or things of that nature. Um,
Absolutely.
and so, it's interesting. I want to kind of double down on a question. You mentioned the $1 million new floor requirement. This is on the direct side. What what's driving Microsoft to kind of lever that number up? I mean, that was almost 3x from where it was from the beginning. Just curious if you have any insights on that.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to quite a few people internally about it, and obviously, I wasn't part of the decision process.
Right.
So
Not both of us
anything that
weren't.
I'm putting out is pure speculation. But based on everything else that they've done, I just think it ultimately comes down to the customer experience. I mean,
Right.
if I'm selling $200,000 worth of CSP, um, is that tougher to achieve? Yeah, it's not an easy thing for all partners to achieve, but I also feel like Microsoft recognized that that floor was a little bit low to be able to set a bar for direct CSP to validate that those partners would have that level of operational maturity,
Right.
because $200,000 worth of CSP, I could easily do that with a handful of partners, maybe one good customer that I have and a handful of small ones, but that doesn't indicate that I've made a heavy investment in that. But once you get to $1 million in run rate for CSP, you've at least got some level of focus on it. You're probably doing things like quarterly business reviews. You're utilizing the analytics that exist in Partner Center to create upsell motions. Your sales team understands what Microsoft's focus areas are. So there's a little bit more of an investment from an organization perspective to get to 1 million versus let me just obtain a bunch of customers through discounted licensing.
Yeah, the introduction of additional value is definitely Microsoft's goal right now, which is, how do we increase and invest into the ones who've got that maturity in place and support the ones through indirect that perhaps Microsoft isn't their focal point of revenue, right? That's going to be the question all business owners have to ask themselves is, where do I really put this vendor in my line card in terms of importance? But what's your take on that comment?
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to I think you said it. Where am I going to make that investment? And being able to identify those key motions becomes critical. And I think one of those other aspects behind the change and the increase in that floor was because Microsoft doesn't want their licensing to be treated like I think the hardware business really
Right.
became, which was just a
Good
race
point.
to the bottom. Who
Good
can
point.
give their customers the cheapest price? It's now allowing those partners to really focus on who's providing the most value. And as somebody that has built multiple CSP programs, that was always something that we focused on. It's not about making sure that you're the cheapest. Yeah, some customers want the cheapest price, but those may not be your target ICP.
Right.
Your target ICP are customers that want a true partner that is going to maximize the value of what they're purchasing.
Yeah, good point. And let's kind of pivot a bit into the compute Azure space, because that's equally as important, right? So we've got, for those who are not very familiar with Microsoft's ecosystem, you've kind of split by two. You've got the M365 and everything under the sun in terms of that catalog, and then you've got the subject matter expertise that flows into Azure Compute and Azure architecture. But in that Azure architecture environment, there are badges that you can receive, call them badges of honor. What does a badge do in terms of your status to the M365 side? And what are some of the complementary things that evolve from that scenario?
So, I mean, you have some that are, I would say, the more elite programs that Microsoft offers. Then you have some of the advanced specializations that are associated with the designation. So kind of tiering up from that, obviously you have the solution designations broken down into those 6 primary categories. Each one has advanced specializations underneath it. So those advanced specializations, for example, AI apps on Azure and AI platform on Azure. That showcases your ability to really build those custom AI driven solutions in an Azure environment, whether it is an app focus or, like I said, platform focus, like
Right.
AI driven data analytics. And so by earning those advanced specializations, you're basically signaling to Microsoft that
There you go.
we have a deep investment and expertise in this area. But it goes even further, especially in the Azure space, where you have things like the Azure Expert MSP. And that requires a very heavy amount of proof, but you're now signaling to Microsoft that not only are we deeply experienced in driving adoption of Azure, but we're also helping our customers to manage and increase their utilization of Azure as their business grows and as they modernize certain things. So then you start getting into some of the advanced programs out there, like Fabric featured, real-time intelligence featured, database featured. Those are all programs that are more community driven, but do require a deep focus in things like Fabric or the advanced database usage and real-time intelligence focused areas. And you're required to showcase customers that you work with, solutions that you've driven, and your continued investment in that space, as well as the technical competency.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you just made me think of something, which is basically, through all those solution designations that Microsoft has established, I think there's a heavy percentage of them, call them 3 out of the 5, that partners tend to go to because it's more traditional infra security. But the higher order ones around Fabric and data warehousing and data normalization, that aligns back to their whole ecosystem on the software side, I think is the challenge that most partners tend to struggle with, so they avoid it. But has that been a situation that you've seen as well throughout
all
your?
the time. Every partner that we talk to, we see a level of, I would say, reaction to their designations. Well, I hired this person and they're certified, and this is where it's crediting us. Should we go after that one? And it may not align to their strategic goals as a partner.
Right.
So one of the key items that we really focus on is we sit down with each one of these partners to highlight the pros and cons, what they can get by earning those designations, what the specializations are that are fall underneath that designation, how they can utilize things like MCI once they've earned some of those specializations or designation. And then we develop an overall training plan that they can give to their technical team, but we also want to work with them in their operational standpoint to make sure they're doing things like either digital or claimed partner of record for the work that they've done. And if they're a CSP, make sure that they're associated to all their customers the right way. That way they're earning the right designation that aligns with their goals as a partner.
I agree, and also fleshing out the ambition of wanting to go down a badge of honor that perhaps organizationally you may not be ready for it skill wise, right? And there's nothing wrong with saying that, because you could go down a certain vertical in a certain market sector and say, yes, I want to aspire to go into that business world, but if the foundational requirements of your company do not have that framework in place, you want to advise against that ultimately, even though you're aspiring for it for now, at least until you build up those building blocks. So, shifting over to operational excellence, I think this is probably one for all the MSPs that are out there, especially the lifestyle MSPs. Like, when it comes to your staff and your team, what are some of the biggest mistakes that, and I'm not just saying they're doing this purposely, right? I'm just saying mistakes happen. We're all human. What are some of the operational mistakes that the technicians or the technical people do while servicing the Microsoft customer that partners should be aware of or think about at least?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think we always talk to partners about the fact that every person is part of their organization is a sales role. Doesn't really matter what their role is. They could be the most technical engineer that they have, but at the end of the day, they're in a sales role. And because growing your relationship with any customer, especially in the Microsoft ecosystem, is always about identifying the next thing that's coming, those engineers that are involved, they need to also understand and be talking to the customer about what their goals are, even in the shorter term. That way, you're helping your customers develop a longer term adoption strategy. So from a technical perspective, just kind of walking in there and saying, okay, well, I've completed my project, and walking away without trying to have conversations with the customer, without at least building relationships with your counterparts in the customer, I feel like that is a little bit of a mistake, because that is your front line of understanding who your customer is and what they're actually trying to accomplish.
So as we talk about evolution in our space, there's this big, term called AI, and it's moving fast.
Never heard it.
And it's been around for 40 years, and we're just hearing about it now. And then we got agentic AI and generative AI and RAG and LLM. And so I guess I'd love to hear from your perspective as a partner. Do I need to care about all that stuff? What do I need to think about? What do I need to focus on? Give the audience 30 seconds of your exposure over the last year on this thing.
I would say it depends. But also yes, because and I say that because there are aspects of AI, depending on the partner that you are, that you might not care about, but you need to care about AI because it has become part of everything. There's AI in security, AI in your data management, AI in help desk and support. There is even AI in the sales process now. I mean, I live and breathe with Copilot anymore. So, so do you need to care? You absolutely do need to care. Do you need to care about all aspects? No, you should map out where AI is going to have the biggest impact to your business, but also give yourself some runway to be able to develop some uniqueness. And I'll give you a prime example. I talk with security partners. AI driven security analysis, AI driven security healing. Not all customers are ready for AI to fix their security problems yet, but at the very least, the identification, the reporting, and maybe even flagging and preventing some security incidents is definitely a critical thing. And AI can do it significantly faster than any human being could do it at this point.
And arguably a little better too, by the way. And it doesn't need a break, doesn't need a weekend off, and no bio runs either. So
Absolutely.
you got to love some of that stuff, and you got to also kind of get a little concerned about it, right? Because it does have the ability to impact. It can increase operational excellence, but decrease, the EQ part of the business, which is basically something that you still want to be able to talk to a customer and have a conversation like this and say, hey, Mr. Customer, how was your last quarter? What can we do for you to help you out? So forth, so on.
100%.
So, from a PDG standpoint, you guys have been now in business for quite some time. You obviously worked for Microsoft, a tremendous amount of expertise there. We are a strategic partner with you guys on the advisory side, and we clearly work together very well. What would you tell the partners listening today in terms of your message as PDG? What can we share with them that can add more value to both of our businesses?
Yeah, I would definitely say, there's really two key areas to focus on from a Microsoft partnership perspective. Every partner wants profitability. That's a given, and there are ways to do that. But achieving that is the operational optimization of how you manage your relationship. And if you treat it in a reactive manner, everything that you earn from that is going to be reactive. But if you treat it like a regular motion and a regular part of your business, and there are ways to automate that, there are ways to integrate it with your normal daily flow, that is where you're going to start seeing that optimization. And to me, it doesn't really matter what type of partner you are. That operational efficiency and operational excellence and the investment in developing a strategic relationship with Microsoft, as well as any of the other relationships that you might have, that strategic investment in your relationship and managing it the right way is probably the most critical aspect to any type of relationship, Microsoft included.
Yeah, absolutely. It has to be at the tip of the spear, as they say, right? It has to be part of your focus and your funnel. So thank you for your time today, Chuck. Everybody, PDG is focused on helping you grow your business from an MSP and a service provider perspective. Feel free to reach out to Chuck or his team. And you've heard it from the CEO and the man himself, talk all day Microsoft, and he has a lot more to say. So get on his calendar and get some time. Thank you for attending the show today, Chuck, and looking forward to talking to you again very soon.
Sounds great. I appreciate you having me.
My pleasure.